my name is Kirsten. So for today, I'm going to be doing another recommendations for Halloween. I believe I did another recommendations video sometime on Friday, I believe, and this is going to be the final one, I promise you. This recommendation video is going to be all about video games, so everything from early generation PlayStation to the latest generation PlayStation games. So PlayStation 1 all the way to 4, and I will also be recommending a few video games. Before I completely begin this video, if you're new to this channel and if you haven't already, please do consider subscribing to my channel with notifications on. I upload brand new videos every single weekend. So without further ado, I'm gonna go ahead and dive right on into these video game suggestions. All of these video games generally are in my gaming collection. Some of them are digitally downloaded and some of them are generated through my computer. So I'm gonna go ahead and start off with some of my PlayStation games. So the first one I'm gonna be recommending is Clock Tower 3. This is based off of the Clock Tower series. I've never played the first one or the second one, but the third one I have played. It is just something fun to play. It's a bit cringy at times, but it is still pretty fun to play around and just kind of have a little bit of a laugh with. So it is definitely something worth playing. The next few video games I'm going to be recommending to you are two games actually for this one. So it is based off of a movie. So the first one I'm going to be recommending is Saw the video game, as well as Saw 2 Flesh and Blood. Normally, I don't really get into video games that are based off of a movie, and normally it spells a recipe for a disaster, but in this case, these two are a pretty good exception in my book. So if you get into the Saw video game as well as the movie series, this is something I would recommend for you guys to play. The next video game I am also going to be recommending to you is Splatterhouse. Now with Splatterhouse, I believe it's based off of a older classic. This is definitely just a fun game to play around for Halloween. The game is somewhat similar to Deadpool in a sense, but in more of like a gory, twisted way. It does have a little bit of humor in it also, so this is pretty fun to play around. If you have not played it, I highly recommend that you do so. The next video game I'm going to be recommending to you is Condemned to Bloodshot. Now, I have not played the original. I do believe that they have it for the Xbox 360 as well as having it on PC, I think. This is one of those crime, mystery, gory, violent type of video games, so if this is something that you're really interested in, I highly recommend that you played this. The next video game I'm going to be recommending to you is Clive Barker's Jericho. When I found out that Clive Barker was going to make a video game, I was kind of shocked, to be honest, because normally he produces a lot of movies and the like. Playing this game a long time ago, it reminded me of like the newer Resident Evil in a sense, but in like a crappy way, sort of speak, but it's still pretty fun to play. If you have not played this one, I highly recommend that you do so. It's just really fun to play around. The next few games I'm going to be recommending to you is Fear, which is First Encounter Assault Recon, as well as Fear 2, Project Origins, and Fear 3. This game series is pretty eerie, and it's a very dark and a bit creepy as well, especially with the girl that roams around in this game. So if you have not played this game series, I highly recommend that you do so if psychological horror is your thing for video games. The next video game I'm going to be recommending to you are The Darkness, and The Darkness 2. The first one was definitely one of my favorite games when it first came out. I absolutely love this concept of trying to take control of the darkness. The first one is definitely a lot more darker than the second one, but the second one I also recommend because these two are just kind of fun to play around with. This is based off of a comic book, so if you have not played these two already, I highly suggest you do so, especially if you get into the comic. The next game series I'm going to be recommending to you is Resistance: Fall of Man, as well as Resistance 2. Now, unfortunately, I do not have the third one, at least not just yet, so if you get into Call of Duty, this is kind of similar to this, but more of like an alien invasion type of plot or scenario. So if shooter games is your thing, then these two are a pretty good recommendation. The next gaming recommendation I'm going to be recommending to you is a complete series, it seems like. So I have Silent Hill Origins, Silent Hill 2, Silent Hill 3, and inside the Silent Hill 3 video game, I also have Shattered Memories, Silent Hill 4, Silent Hill Homecoming, Silent Hill Downpour, and also the original Silent Hill on the PlayStation 1. I am really genuinely into the Silent Hill series. If you get into really eerie type of video games such as the Silent Hill series, it is something I highly recommend for you guys to play because it is one of my favorite horror series of all time. The next game I'm going to be recommending to you is a complete series also, and that is Fatal Frame, the original of course, Fatal Frame 2, Crimson Butterfly, as well as Fatal Frame 3, The Tormented. Unfortunately, the fourth one never came out on the PlayStation 2 or the 3 for that matter, but the first one was definitely so creepy, as well as these other two right here. If the idea of ghosts really do scare the living shit out of you, especially if it is based off of Japanese culture, then this is something I would recommend for you guys to play. The next game I'm going to be recommending to you is Rule of Rose. The gameplay is a mixture of Haunting Ground and the Silent Hill series. Haunting Ground I will get into in a minute, but this is one of those games where it's just so weird and shitty that it is actually pretty good. So if you get into the book Lord of the Flies, the plot of this video game is kind of similar in that sense. If the idea of creepy children really do scare the shit out of you, then this is something I would suggest for you guys to play. The next game I'm going to be recommending to you is another series, and this one by far is going to be the most obvious one, but I am going to be recommending to you Resident Evil Outbreak, Resident Evil Outbreak File 2, Resident Evil 4, Resident Evil 5, Resident Evil 6, and Resident Evil Revelations. Now, unfortunately, there's still a bit of some of the Resident Evil games that I still haven't gotten yet, but we'll eventually get around to collecting them, including the newest one. So if the idea of zombies is something you really get into, this is definitely something that you would definitely be interested in playing. The next game I'm going to be recommending to you is something out of a series that I never thought I would be able to pick, but that game generally is Tomb Raider: The Angel of Darkness. This, I believe, 5th or 4th installment of the Tomb Raider series. This is probably the most darkest in the series as far as I know of. Kind of like a crime mystery type of series from the Tomb Raider series. So if the idea of crime stories, investigations is something you would be interested in, then this is something I would recommend. The controls are absolutely lousy in this game, but I simply enjoy playing this game because of the story, so if you're interested in playing a shitty controlled game with a really good story, then this is something I would recommend for you guys to play. The next game I'm going to be recommending to you is something I mentioned earlier, and that is, of course, Haunting Ground. This was originally a spin-off to the Clock Tower series. This was supposed to be the 4th Clock Tower installment, and instead they changed it to Haunting Ground simply because of the fact that it was a groundbreaking game in the series where it involved interacting with your dog. So if the idea of being chased by villains is something you feel real creeped out by, then this is something I would recommend for you guys to play as well as check out. The next game I'm going to be recommending to you guys is, of course, another series, and that is, of course, Dead Space. Dead Space 2, as well as Dead Space 3. If the idea of aliens or monsters in space really scare the shit out of you, especially the first game installment, then this is something I would recommend for you guys to play. The first one definitely scared the complete shit out of me, for sure. And the second, as well as the third game installment, is something I would recommend for you guys to play for fun, especially the first one, since the first one is a lot more creepier than these two. I absolutely love the game series very much. The next game I'm going to be recommending to you is Catherine. Now, I know this is more of like a questionnaire relationship type game, but it does incorporate a lot of horror elements into this game. There's parts of it that is pretty eerie and creepy as well. So if you get into kind of like, I want to say puzzle related games, then this is something I would recommend for you guys to play as well as check out, because this would be a real fun game to play on Halloween. The next game I'm going to be recommending to you guys is The Evil Within. Playing this game gave me a sense of another Resident Evil game, because the person that created the Resident Evil series to happen incorporated this game, so it's so creepy in its own way. The sequel came out not that long ago, I believe, and maybe one of these days I might have to have a chance to pick up the sequel and play that game. If the idea of psychological shooter type of horror games interest you, then this is something I would recommend for you guys to play for sure. The next game I'm going to be recommending to you guys is The Last of Us. It's more of like a survival apocalyptic related video game, but it really does have a little bit of horror elements to it as well. So if the idea of beautiful environments and survival is something you are most definitely interested in, this is something I would recommend for you guys to play. The next game I'm going to be recommending to you guys is Until Dawn. So this game is somewhat similar to Silent Hill Shattered Memories, but the way the game is structurized kind of reminds me of something from a Tattletales game. The story plot is similar to that of like a typical slasher movie, but it is incorporated into a game. So if the idea of having questions depending on the outcome of your video game type of games, then this is something I would recommend for you guys to play, because this game is not only creepy, but it is really fun to play around and figuring out what the outcome of the game is going to affect based off of your decisions. The next game I'm going to recommend for you guys to play is Dark Souls. Unfortunately, I do not have the second or third one just yet, but I'm playing through the first one so I could move on into the second one and eventually the third one if I get around to replaying this game, since my PlayStation 3 died not that long ago. This game is more like something that really pisses you off just trying to get through some enemies and boss battles and stuff, but in a sense it is kind of fun to play around with, simply because of some of the creepy monsters and the environment that is surrounded into this game. If that is your thing, then I would highly suggest that you give this game a pretty good go. The next game I'm going to recommend to you to play around for fun also is, of course, Bloodborne. The gameplay is relatively similar to that of Dark Souls. If you're somebody that is really into Dark Souls, this is probably going to be the game for you, because it has a lot more darker elements to this game. It kind of makes me wonder if this is a spin-off to the Dark Souls series. Kind of makes me wonder about that. Leave it in the comments so I know. But yes, if you love Dark Souls, then you're gonna love this game as well. The next game I'm gonna recommend for you guys to play on Halloween is, of course, Alice Madness Returns. So this is the complete sequel to the American McGee's Alice. If dark fairy tales is something you really get into, I would highly suggest that you play this game. I know this game is pretty colorful in a sense, but there is something about this game that is psychologically twisted. So if psychologically twisted games as well as dark fairy tales is something you really get into, I would suggest you play this, because what makes Alice in Wonderland even more twisted is the fact that it incorporates a lot of dark elements into this as well. And of course, speaking of Madness Returns, American McGee's Alice is something I would also recommend for you guys to play. It is a lot more twisted than the sequel. If your idea of a good time on Halloween is incorporating a dark fairy tale involved, American McGee's Alice is something I would recommend for you guys to play as well. For the PlayStation Vita, I would highly recommend that you play the Corpse Party series. If the idea of a haunted school or just Japanese haunted ghosts generally scares the shit out of you, kind of like how Fatal Frame is, then that would be something for you guys to go ahead and check out. The game series definitely gave me the chills when I had a chance to play that game also. Another game I'm going to be mentioning for you guys to play as well as check out is the original Parasite Eve. It kind of reminds me of a darker version of Final Fantasy in a sense. If you get into Resident Evil, and if you also get into Square Enix, definitely check that game out. It is really fun to play. So the last few games I'm going to be mentioning to you guys are, of course, PC games. So the first one I'm going to be mentioning to you is Amnesia: The Dark Descent. So if the idea of being chased by a monster with no means of trying to defend yourself, this is probably something for you to handle. And finally, last but most definitely not least, I would recommend that you play The Cat Lady. The game itself is pretty dark. If you have a chance to play that game, you'll know exactly what I am talking about. So if you get into dark stories similar to American McGee's Alice, then this is probably going to be something for you. So that's pretty much all of the gaming recommendations for you guys to play on Halloween. It was a pretty big list of games that I thought you guys could play. If you tried out any of these games I recommended earlier, then leave it in the comments down below and let me know what you think of either one of these games. If there's any horror themed games you would like for me to go ahead and check out, leave it in the comments down below and I might consider playing them as well. I hope you guys enjoyed what I had to share all together. So if you did, be sure to sucker punch that like button down below. And of course, if you're new here and if you haven't already, please do dedicate the time and effort to subscribe to my lovely channel, join my little army of darkness, and if you hit that notification button, you will be updated with brand new videos every single weekend. If you guys are interested in following me outside of YouTube, all of my social medias will be listed in the description box right down below if you are indeed interested in checking them out yourself. Thank you guys so much for watching. Have a completely chill week, an awesome day or night, and I will talk to you all soon in the next video. So until then, stay completely dark and so fucking brutal and awesome, my friends.